With the issue separation for Ab and Britt, initially as babies, we were told kind of inseparable. We went with that.
For 34 years.
Below the shoulders, their bodies are a mix of duplicated and shared systems. They each have their own heart, their own stomach, and their own set of lungs on their side of the chest. But they share one liver, one large intestine, one bladder, and one reproductive system. Their spines run separately from the neck down and gradually end them, which doctors removed in early childhood because it wasn't functional. Urge into a single spinal column near the pelvis. Some people spend their whole lives trying to stand out. Abby and Brittany Hensel spent theirs learning how to move as one, because for them, there was never any other option. Born sharing a single body, they turned what doctors once called impossible into an ordinary Tuesday. This is the real story of how they got here, and where their lives stand today. Abby and Brittany Hensel were born on March 7, 1990, in New Germany, Minnesota. Their mother, Patty Hensel, has said in past interviews that ultrasounds before the birth only showed signs of a single baby. The full picture of what she was carrying didn't become clear until delivery. The girls arrived as dicephalous parapagus twins, a form of conjoined twinning so rare that most doctors will never see a single case in their entire careers. The condition happens at the earliest possible stage of pregnancy. Identical twins normally begin as one fertilized egg that splits completely into two separate embryos. In dicephalous parapagus twinning, that split starts but never finishes. The result, in Abby and Brittany's case, is two separate heads, two separate necks, and two separate spines at the top, but one shared torso from the chest down. They were even born with a third arm between vis, which is also shared. That shared lower spine is the reason each twin controls only one side of their combined body. Abby controls the right arm and right leg. Brittany controls the left arm and left leg. Walking, sitting down, clapping, or even scratching an itch requires two brains agreeing, often without a word spoken between them. It's a level of physical cooperation that took years of unconscious practice to build, the kind most people never have to think about, because most people only have one brain steering one body. From the moment doctors examined them as infants, one thing was already clear. Separating Abby and Brittany surgically was never going to be realistically possible. Their shared liver, shared lower intestines, and, most critically, their fused lower spinal cord meant that any attempt to divide them would almost certainly cost one or both girls their ability to walk, control their bladder, or survive the operation at all. Unlike some conjoined twins whose connection is limited to skin and cartilage, the Hensels' anatomy is deeply, permanently intertwined. Their parents made the decision early on to raise them as they were, and to give them the fullest possible life inside the body they were born with, not the body doctors wished they had. Patty and Mike Hensel made a deliberate choice in how they raised their daughters, as individuals who happened to share a body, not as a single unit with two names. Each girl had her own personality from the start. Abby has always been the more outspoken, decisive one. Brittany has tended to be quieter, more reflective, willing to let her sister take the lead in conversation while she processes things internally. They went to a regular public school, played sports adapted to their bodies, including basketball and volleyball, learned to swim, and rode bicycles built for their unique balance needs. They also learned to type, each hand working independently on their half of the keyboard, and eventually learned to drive a car, splitting the pedals and steering wheel duties between them. Their parents allowed limited media access over the years, partly to satisfy public curiosity in a controlled way and partly to help the girls and other families dealing with rare conditions feel less alone. Abby and Brittany first appeared before a national audience on The Oprah Winfrey Show in 1996, when they were 6 years old. The appearance introduced millions of viewers to two little girls who, rather than seeming tragic or fragile, came across as playful, articulate, and completely at ease in their own skin. In 2003, they were the subjects of the documentary Joined for Life, which followed a year of their adolescence and gave audiences a much closer look at their daily routines, how they ate, how they got dressed, how they argued like any pair of sisters, and how they navigated a world built for one person per body. Discovery Health later produced additional documentaries checking in on them as teenagers, tracking their physical development and their increasingly independent personalities. By the time they reached their late teens, Abby and Brittany had become minor celebrities without ever really seeking the spotlight. In 2012, TLC gave them their own 8-episode reality series, Abby and Brittany, which followed them through the tail end of college. The show depicted them doing ordinary young adult things, navigating a college class schedule, traveling to Europe, riding a moped through narrow streets, and figuring out what career they wanted. That career turned out to be teaching. Both sisters pursued degrees in education, and after graduating, they became elementary school teachers in Minnesota, reportedly both working with fifth-grade students. Colleagues who have spoken about them over the years describe two capable, well-liked teachers who happen to share a body, rather than a novelty act. After the TLC show wrapped, Abby and Brittany made a clear choice. They stepped back from television entirely and kept their adult lives almost entirely private for more than a decade. That privacy wasn't about hiding, it was about drawing a boundary. They continued posting occasionally on social media, sharing photos from vacations, holidays, and life milestones, but they stopped inviting camera crews into their home. For years, most of what the public knew about their day-to-day life came from these scattered posts rather than any produced documentary. The biggest development in their adult lives turned out to be one they'd successfully kept secret for years. In March 2024, public marriage records surfaced showing that Abby had quietly married Josh Bowling, a registered nurse and United States Army veteran, on November 13, 2021, nearly 3 years before the news became public. The Hensels and Bowling had apparently agreed to keep the marriage private, and largely succeeded, until reporters tracking public records connected the dots. Once the news broke, Abby and Brittany responded not with denial or discomfort, but by sharing their own photos and videos from the wedding day on social media. Images of Abby in a wedding dress standing beside Brittany, with Bowling in a gray suit, surrounded by family. Because Abby and Brittany share one body, the marriage inevitably raised questions that most couples never have to think about. Legally, the marriage belongs to Abby. Her name is the one on the certificate. But in every practical sense, Brittany is a permanent, physical presence in that marriage too, since the sisters cannot be in different places at different times. Bowling has spoken about this dynamic with visible respect for both sisters, describing an arrangement built on mutual understanding rather than pretending Brittany simply isn't there. Wedding footage that later circulated shows Brittany actively part of the celebration, dancing, supporting her sister, present for every moment of the day, even though the legal union is Abby's alone. Bowling brought a daughter, Isabella, from a previous marriage into the family, making Abby a stepmother and Brittany, by extension, part of that same role in the household, even though the legal title again technically applies to Abby. Family photos since the wedding have shown Isabella included in outings and holidays with her stepmother, or stepmothers, depending on how one chooses to think about it. As of the most recent public updates, Abby and Brittany, now in their mid-30s, continue teaching elementary school in Minnesota, the state where they were born and raised. They've kept a relatively low public profile since the marriage news broke, occasionally sharing recap videos and photo montages on social media around the holidays, but otherwise staying out of the spotlight they once inhabited as children. In 2025, they were photographed in public with an infant, which sparked widespread speculation online about whether the family had welcomed a baby. Neither Abby, Brittany, nor Josh Bowling has publicly confirmed whose child it is or given any official statement about a pregnancy or birth. Given how carefully the family kept the 2021 wedding private for years, it's entirely possible any further family news will only become public on their own timeline, if at all. Anything beyond the photos themselves remains speculation, and treating it as confirmed fact would get ahead of what the family has actually said. What is clear is that Abby and Brittany have spent their adult lives quietly resisting the idea that their story needs a dramatic new chapter to stay interesting. They were never separated, and there's no public indication that separation has ever been medically reconsidered. Their fused spine and shared organs make it just as dangerous today as it was when they were infants. Instead, their story has simply continued in the most ordinary way possible. Two women who happen to share one body, teaching kids, building a family, and choosing, again and again, how much of their life to let the world see. What often gets lost in headlines about their marriage or their childhood television appearances is just how extraordinary their daily physical coordination actually is, and how little attention it draws once you understand it. Every step Abby and Brittany take requires two nervous systems agreeing on timing, direction, and balance in real time. Neither sister can simply decide to walk faster or turn left without the other cooperating. And yet, footage of them walking, typing, playing sports, or driving shows movements so fluid that a stranger might not immediately register anything unusual. That fluency didn't come from any single training program or medical intervention. It came from 30-plus years of two brains adapting to a shared body from infancy onward, the same way any child's brain adapts to controlling two hands or two legs, except in their case, the two halves belong to two separate people with two separate wills. Specialists who have studied their case over the decades have pointed to it as one of the clearest real-world examples of how adaptable the human nervous system can be, even under conditions that would seem, on paper, completely unworkable. Abby and Brittany Hensel never asked to become a subject of medical fascination or tabloid curiosity. What they've built instead, a shared career, a private adult life, and now a family that includes a husband and stepdaughter, reads less like a medical case study and more like an ordinary life, made extraordinary only by the body it happens to be lived in. Their story offers something rare in an era of manufactured drama, proof that resilience doesn't always look like crisis and recovery. Sometimes it looks like two people quietly getting up every day, going to work, raising a family, and refusing to let a rare condition define the shape of their happiness. There was no surgery, no separation, and no single dramatic turning point that changed everything overnight. There was just 3 decades of two sisters figuring out, one ordinary day at a time, exactly how to live one life together.